What is this bubbling out of the ground in my yard? It has a purplish, metallic, gooey texture. It keeps bubbling even when I dig a thin layer down with a shovel. This appeared in just a few hours today. When removed with a shovel, it slowly but continuously bubbles back up out of the ground. I'll be calling the non-emergency number and will update once I have more information, but I'm really curious to know what it is. Any ideas? The non-emergency number transferred me to the fire department, who came out to inspect. They dug it up and discovered it was from a can of expansion foam that the builders had left in the yard. Water had reached the can, causing it to rust and leak, which led the foam to surface. It was the best possible outcome for me, though I'm sure some people were hoping for something more exciting. We opened a time capsule buried in the courthouse lawn in spring 2020. It has been buried in June 1970. The capsule was a pine coffin that was sealed in a concrete vault that looked like it had failed almost immediately. There were several coins that made it and a few plastic trinkets that sort of survived, but all papers and documentation was basically just sludge, with the exception of some newspapers triple-wrapped in garbage bags and a few things on top of that pile. This cylinder was at the bottom of the sludgy remains, along with a horseshoe that was identifiable but rusted thin. You can see by the picture, it is about the length of my finger. It's solid and rather heavy for its size. I can't tell if that is a label or a piece of something like athletic tape wrapped around it. It isn't rusted, although there are some rust spots from nearby objects. It has a groove that runs around the top that suggests maybe a clip held it into something, but there was nothing that survived to give a clue as to what that might have been. This object was buried in East Tennessee. It is a solid piece of metal, weighing 3.5 ounces. The item is 3.5 inches long and has a diameter of 7/16 inches. What's most perplexing is that it doesn't have a cap or seam, and it refuses to open, no matter how hard I try, even with a hacksaw or a laser. If you use a taser on it, the metal simply turns into a blob. It's as solid as the Rock of Gibraltar, with no sign of rust, but it does have a unique patina glaze. After examining it thoroughly, I've ruled out a few possibilities. It's definitely not a fuse, and it's not a cigar holder. Despite my best efforts, I haven't found any documents, letters, or notes that could provide more information about its history. There are no inscriptions, quotes, or clues to help me understand what it might have been used for. At this point, it remains an enigma, one that I can't quite solve. The more I try to learn about it, the more it seems to resist any answers, and I'm left wondering if it will always be a mystery. Any idea what it could be? It turns out this does open. It is something funeral home directors put in caskets in case of catastrophe or natural disaster. A waterproof scroll was tucked inside. It read, Roger Burke, Mary Jean Burke, Sherry Burke, Stephanie Burke, ages left to right, 29, 25, 6, 3. Roger's an embalmer and funeral director. Mary Jean a nurse. Roger is from Cookeville, Tennessee. Mary Jean from Nashville, Tennessee. Mary Jean is a direct descendant of James Robertson, the founder of Nashville, Tennessee. Some famous persons who I have buried while in Nashville, Tennessee: Jim Reeves, country music star killed in plane crash, Patsy Cline, Cowboy Copas, Hawshack Hawkins, Texas Ruby, all music stars killed in plane crash. In doing some research on the names on the scroll tucked inside of this casket capsule, I have found out that the man who put it there died just a couple of weeks before I got it open. We had a ceremony after we opened it. Anyone that was present during the burial of the capsule and their descendants were invited. None of the people that attended had much of a memory about the original event at all, and hardly remember anything about the time capsule itself. While walking along a beach, something caught my eye, gold glinting from a rock. Curiosity piqued, I decided to break open the rock, which turned out to be asphalt, and what I found inside was nothing short of fascinating. It was a piece of metal, about as thick as a thumb and as long as a middle finger, coated in gold and heavily oxidized. At first, I assumed it might be a bullet, but upon closer inspection, I realized it was something different. It lacked a casing, and its size was far too large to be a typical bullet. As I examined it more closely, I noticed a sequence of letters near the top. Though hard to decipher, I could make out Ma-D and another sequence that looked like MBO. Any ideas what this thing is? I contacted the police and they came to look. According to the officer, the Navy in the 50s and 60s dumped excess live ammo offshore in crude oil barrels. The saltwater corroded the barrels, and due to currents, the ammo is now washing on shore. There have been 30 plus found in the past month. The officer says the shell is safe, so long as I don't strike it with metal, because it has been corroded by salt water. I sent a picture of the object to my friend, an artillery expert, for his opinion. He responded with the following. Those are the remains of a fired 20mm shell, likely from an anti-aircraft or aircraft cannon. You can see the imprinted driving band, which indicates it's been fired and it's heavily corroded. The orange residue and washers suggest that this could be a high explosive incendiary shell. The fuse appears to be in good condition, and since it's been fired, the safety interlocks may have been disengaged. It's a Mk26 fuse, which originally had no interlocks at all, so dropping it might trigger an explosion. Given the circumstances, I'll likely dispose of it safely. My friend found this object while using a metal detector about 6 inches deep in the sand at Malibu Beach, California. The small piece is magnetic, silvery, and sharp, weighing about 1 pound. It was fully encased in weathered metal piping. What was curious about it was that the heavy, semi-ovular magnetic piece of metal was completely enclosed inside the weathered metal casing and shook loosely when moved. At first, he would have assumed it was just a rock and left it alone, but the metal detector beeped when he passed over it. He picked it up and could feel something inside, which intrigued him enough to want to figure out what it was. Any idea what it could be? I believe the container is a concretion formed from the corrosion products of the iron. However, I'm not sure why the wrought iron would be encased in the capsule-like part. It seems to have been intentionally enclosed, though I could be mistaken. My guess is that the pipe is the original outer surface of the iron object, possibly coated with red lead paint. Over time, the corrosion has worn away the iron artifact inside the pod. During a recent beach cleanup at Lake Victoria in Kenya, my friend came across a weird object. It was quite heavy and metallic. I've heard that the area once housed an air base during World War II. Given its weight and metal composition, I can't help but wonder if it could be a piece of military equipment or even a munition left behind from that era. Any idea what it could be?